I have stopped healing Mythic Plus for the first time since Mythic Plus was released back in Legion because I started playing Augmentation instead, and I don't think I'm the only one. Let's get into the 3 balance reasons why, but also, and more importantly, what I think can be done to fix them. The first and most egregious problem right now is the toolkit disparity between healers. That probably isn't going to surprise anybody. Healing on anything but a Holy Paladin at the moment feels like the challenging component of healing is making do with half a toolkit. Every other healer feels like it's missing some kind of core component part to a healer's toolkit, like not having any spot healing, well, you have to make do. Not having any mobile healing, again, you have to somehow make do. Having no preemptive or reactive cooldowns, again, you have to make do. Even something as simple as those preemptive cooldowns and reactive cooldowns is something that really only paladins currently enjoy. Since Legion, Discipline Priests, as an example, have been notoriously designed around having preemptive cooldowns that are used before an event to help avoid it or mitigate it, but no reactive cooldowns that help get out of bad situations or recover from mistakes after the event has occurred. I don't understand how Blizzard can ever truly expect a specialization like Discipline in its current state to compete with a specialization like Holy Paladin that has both powerful preemptive cooldowns like Aura Mastery and Wings, as well as reactive ones like Divine Toll and Daybreak. In a similar vein, I don't understand how a specialization like Holy Priest or Mistweaver Monk, which are both designed around having their powerful throughput be tied to standing still and casting spells, to ever be able to compete with a specialization like Holy Paladin that has similarly powerful throughput tied entirely to instant cast spells. Now, an argument could be made that this is proof that Holy Paladin is way overpowered, but dungeon encounters, which is an environment where a single healer is expected to heal through heavy group-wide damage, are made with movement and healing throughput requirements that overlap, sometimes significantly so, which means that healers must have the tools to do that, but Holy Priest and Mistweaver don't, at least nowhere near to the same extent that other healers do. I'm not saying that each healer needs the exact same toolkit, but they do need to be able to achieve similar results, albeit in different ways. We have healers like Mistweaver and Discipline that require some form of ramp, but don't get the payoff that such a requirement should mandate. Having to stand still to press 3 or 4 buttons in the correct order at the correct time to get less healing throughput than another healer haphazardly spamming instant casts is not an acceptable state of balance in modern World of Warcraft. It reminds me a little bit of Chekhov's gun, actually, in movies. It's a theory that states that every element of a story must be necessary. If Chekhov walks into a bar, for example, with a gun, there must be a reason for him to have the gun. Similarly, in World of Warcraft, if some specializations are going to be given multiple buttons that they should be combining together, those buttons must do something meaningful. The specializations with stricter requirements to combine abilities in specific ways at specific times must be rewarded with better results, or else they're just clunkier versions of other specializations with extra steps. The second reason I stopped healing Mythic Plus is the overwhelming and extremely punishing reliance on cooldowns. This is an issue that is the result of 2 factors. The first is that the throughput difference between cooldown healing and rotational healing or non-cooldown healing is too large. It means that having Ascendance or Incarn or Apotheosis rolling 3 seconds too late or 3 seconds too early can be extremely punishing, which is just another way of saying that rotational healing sucks. The second factor here is that some healers have 5 or 6 powerful cooldowns and some have 2 weak ones. The cooldown disparity between healers is too vast. The fix for both of these issues, in my opinion, is a combination of making rotational healing more powerful and dependable, as well as giving healers, other than Holy Paladins of course, more cooldown buttons to press that are impactful. A specialization like Discipline having multiple 30 to 40 second cooldowns that all really don't do anything isn't what I'm asking for here. A specialization like Discipline Priest having multiple 30 to 40 second cooldowns that all don't do anything isn't what I'm asking for here. Being able to use a cooldown and keep another one in your back pocket, so to speak, for a panic moment, or being able to walk into every boss and every pack in a dungeon with either a cooldown available or one already up, is more what I think should become standard. Holy Paladin right now has 5 or 6 cooldowns, which feels like a cooldown abundance rather than a cooldown reliance, partly because their rotational throughput is also so good, and I think other healers should be brought up to this similar level. Unintuitively, a general buff to the rotational throughput or power of healers in combination with the reduction of their reliance on cooldowns is probably the largest nerf that Augmentation Evokers could receive, and it would go a long way to making Augmentation Evokers feel like a luxury or an actual third DPS in a group rather than a mandatory addition to that group, which is brought specifically to buff the healer by 15 to 20% and bring 2 or 3 extra group survival cooldowns. The final and the lesser of the 3 reasons that I stopped healing Mythic Plus is failure mechanics. Specifically, how someone else's failure becomes my problem as the healer. This is a tricky one. Standing in the fire makes you die, which has been a fundamental part of World of Warcraft since the game's inception, so I'm hesitant to call for sweeping changes to how failure mechanics are implemented, and this also becomes somewhat of a non-issue as keys get higher because mechanics failures just kills players or the group rather than injuring them. However, this is definitely the biggest pain point in pugs for me. It's the difference between healing one key and feeling drained and DPSing keys for a whole Saturday and being keen for more. I really enjoy healing the unavoidable and especially predictable damage patterns in dungeons, and I like playing the mechanics like everybody else, but I dislike healing groups that primarily take damage from avoidable sources, especially because I'm not expecting it and I have to just react to it. This often comes at the cost of me expending cooldowns or mana that I could otherwise use on unavoidable damage mechanics, which makes, in some cases, healing up somebody else's mistake like it's costing me something and it's making me play more poorly. So I would like to see more ways for Blizzard to implement failure mechanics that aren't simply taking damage. Haste debuffs or deactivation of critical strikes or a percentage damage reduction for a time are all ways that failure mechanics could be expanded into more dimensions. Sometimes I daydream in Freehold and imagine a world where players who stand in the fire get a barrel thrown on them that limits their vision by forcing them to focus on the source of their mistake, the ground, but allows them to move and can't be freedomed or damaged off. It's just a penalty for the player who made the mistake. Now finally, I would like to end this video by saying that the fundamental issue facing Mythic Plus in this season is that dungeon design has evolved further than class and specialization design, and it's out of step with it. Rogues not being able to handle Afflicted, warriors not being able to meaningfully help with incorporeal are examples of a larger problem. I hope Blizzard start balancing the game with Mythic Plus in mind as an environment where tanks and healers especially must independently be capable of performing their role. DPS have 3 classes and 3 specs from which to spread the burden of their role across. Tanks and healers are on their own. Perhaps it would be wise for Blizzard to design the difficulty, failure mechanics, affixes, and the depth of Mythic Plus and small-scale dungeon content around the role that has the most flexibility and redundancy, rather than around the role that has the least. Enjoy this original meme, while I quickly say thanks to all of those who support this channel, whether that's with a like or a comment through Patreon or a YouTube membership. Thanks very much for your support and for watching, and algorithm stuff.